good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here today on this forum of launching of our Global Hunger Index. And thanks to all our colleagues, friends, and partners from different fields joining us in this evening to make this a more successful movement that we could try to pose for the next kind of phase that we are trying to target for our program. And in this effort, let me try to take this opportunity where I would like to basically take you through the food system crisis and its significance that we all are trying here to understand in this evening. And to understand this crisis and its significance, perhaps one of the steps that I would like to go through is to take you through some of our concerns program where we focus and how we try to address this food system crisis globally. And in order to say that, it is better to say it from the community's perspective where we work, where the hunger warriors, those who are actually fighting against hunger on their day-to-day life, their stories perhaps will bring you more hope to see that there is a possibility in the coming days where they, on an everyday basis, they struggle through it and find solution to overcome this crisis. And from their voices, we will try to bring some recommendations what perhaps would try to bring a solution and hope to the next phase of the world where we can see a better world in future. In terms of food crisis that we have seen in the current phase, 2022, where we are standing in this year, has been considered to be a very significant year in many, many ways. If we simply look at the transition that started from a debate on zero hunger, and today we talk about the net zero development process. Now, how do we envisage a zero hunger world in the net zero development world? That's a very big transition that we are talking about. And in this transition, technology plays a major role. People's access to basic food and basic supplies and services are playing a major role. And in this debate, let me also give you, and particularly to the younger generation, those who are here, a bit of a historical perspective that this whole debate has not only started today. 50 years back, in 2022, we are standing now, in 1972, there was a Stockholm conference where this whole debate was also envisaged that there is a crisis and we need to do something about it. And it's been 50 years, and we are still debating the same issue today. And if you look at the transition since the Rio summit that happened in 1992, it's been 30 years. And that's how much time it has taken to make the government and the leaders and the governance around the world to be effective to do something, and still we are debating the same issue as on today. Now, just to take to the situation that we are facing on the global hunger scenario in 2022, the three major crises that we are currently looking at from a very new perspective, Dominic has already highlighted this point that the population had just reached the 8 billion mark, which was just last week. And this 1 billion turnaround happened over a period of 12 years, very, very quick. And when we are talking about this, have we even thought about those new generation that has come into life and the billionth life that has come into this world? Her name is Astha Arora, and she was born in India. That is the billionth child that was born in Indian soil. We need to think about them. What is happening to our food plate? The food production is declining, and all the crises we are hearing from our colleagues here today, and this new generation that is adding into this whole process, how do we feed them? How do we share our share of the plate, which will be having sufficient and sustainable food supply to all of them together? Now, in this context, let us not forget, just ended COP27 in Egypt, has also given a very grim situation where hesitantly leaders have already acknowledged that we are almost going to cross the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark, which the Paris Agreement has really made a commitment that we will cap the global temperature at that level. Now, it's hesitantly the leadership or the global leadership is looking at the 2 degrees Celsius, somewhere getting prepared to miss this 1.5 degree landmark. And that is going to be adding a major catastrophic scenario across the world, as we see. At the same time, Not to forget the economic fallout, where my colleague has just shared about the situation of COVID and the war in Ukraine, how it has added to the inflations across the world, where almost population from all across the society has been severely affected through this. And the war in Ukraine, which is a war on the food basket of the world, has really added a major crisis at this stage. Now, at this point of time, the Food System Summit, which was a call by the UN Secretary General in 2021, has definitely created a hope that this whole scenario perhaps need to be taken into urgent action, and this food system need to be fixed in this current scenario, otherwise we are going into a very disastrous situation. And in this forum today, what we are discussing, let me also take you through what we do at Concern, what is our role and what we have been playing. And if you look at the map of our global presence, and this shows some of the areas which perhaps you may be reflecting on the global hunger map. I'll show it to you once again, just to remind you. Perhaps an overlap of those countries which has been already identified in the serious category of hunger in the Global Hunger Index in 2022. And this is definitely a situation where we need to look at in terms of Concern's presence, where we are largely looking at the crisis in South Asia and Africa, particularly in south of Sahara, where the scenario has been most serious or severe. And this is where you will find almost the kind of tackling hunger initiative has stagnated to a certain point. Now, if this is a situation where we see as a crisis, then we will be getting into a very different situation. But there are always hopes. And today what I'm going to share with you from some of our country cases where we are working, the Global Hunger Index report, certainly the guest author who has really represented an essay in this report, Daniel Resnick, she has highlighted these hopes that the communities are really bringing into this fixing of the global food system with their own humble efforts. Now, of course, in the report, you will find various countries being referred, Malawi and other countries. But as Concern Korea, being a younger player in the field of humanitarian sector in Korea, we have been really focusing on few of those countries, very sensitive in the hunger scenario, where we are trying to also address this issue from the support of the Korean public, at the same time from the support of KOICA as our donor, who has been really playing a very strong role in helping us in our fight against hunger. The first story I would like to present is from Bangladesh, where we have been working for a very long time, perhaps since its independence. But in terms of GHI index, if you are looking at it from the current report, it is still ranking in 84th with a kind of score of 19.6, which has done well in terms of tackling hunger over a period of time. But at the same time, the climate change impact, because it's the 7th most climate vulnerable country in terms of the CRI index, which has been recently published, the country has been affected by most frequent disasters in the kind of current scenario, name it typhoons or floods or even drought. It is a most vulnerable climate affected country in that context. But the communities that I have seen, particularly because I have worked in Bangladesh for a very long time, where I have seen the struggle of these communities, those who have really tried to overcome this crisis by showing us a resilient pathway, how they can cope with this disaster by building their own resilience capacity. And that is exactly what we try to help these community leaders, where we try to basically help them in terms of building their capacity in terms of community risk and vulnerability analysis at the local governance level. So we work with the women's group at the local level, where the union parishads or the disaster management committees are empowered to assess their own vulnerability in the face of climate change and develop plans how they can overcome this crisis over a period of time. And these initiatives have reached out through a KOICA-funded project where we are helping the farmers, particularly at this point of time. We have almost supported 1,300 plus farmers to support them on developing climate-smart agriculture practices at the field level. And at the same time, we have also tried to help them in many ways where they can not only be empowered to deal with these issues, but also having an economic independence where they could deal with this crisis in terms of building their resilience with regard to sustainable agriculture or climate-smart agriculture practices, rearing livestock, which brings certain kind of income to those women members in the family, and supporting them with provision of safe drinking water from rainwater harvesting mechanism, which is basically an area which is inundated with saline intrusion, which is not allowing them to even have safe drinking water for their consumption. Now, these kind of initiatives where we have been trying to help the communities to build their resilience has definitely brought some hopes, and that's where we would like to see that there is possibility that these communities can overcome this crisis in future. Now, let me take you to another example in the same country, Bangladesh as well. You must have heard about the crisis of the Rohingya refugees in 2017 when the influx happened from Myanmar. Bangladesh is the only country which perhaps hosted them. And in these Rohingya camps, almost 68% of these Rohingya refugees have been facing nutrition crisis, despite the humanitarian assistance and everything that we have been providing. But through this initiative, what we have been able to do is to work with the mother care groups, those who are basically facilitating a nutrition-sensitive program, helping them with this homestead kitchen garden mechanism, teaching them in terms of how to cook nutritious food, and helping the children and the lactating and pregnant mothers to overcome this crisis. And here we do play a lead role in the nutrition sector, along with WFP and UNICEF in partnership with UN agencies, and work with the local government to provide a solution and feed into the National Plan of Action on Nutrition. And through this initiative, we have been able to reach out to more than 14,000 families in the Rohingya refugee camps as well. Now, having talked about this, let me take you into Africa, where we have been also engaged for quite a long time in Ethiopia. And this is a country, as you might all know from news, has been always in a context of conflict. And the most recent one in 2020 in the Tigray region has really again pushed people into the face of conflict, where they are losing their lives and livelihoods. In terms of GIHA score, again, they have been in quite serious category, which is ranking about 104th. And in this context, as it is a fragile and conflict-affected context, working there has been challenging. But since Concern's presence has been there for a long time, we have been able to deliver some very interesting project with our program in partnership with COICA again. We have been able to deliver 3 major projects since 2017 to 2021, which has just completed. And through these 3 integrated development projects, we have been able to engage with the local government, and particularly the local cooperatives, which are helping the local communities to provide the support for climate-smart agriculture. And with this support, we have been able to reach out to more than 900 female-headed households to build their skills, capacity through asset transfer and making them capable of having their own income and livelihood. At the same time, more than 13,000 households have been able to overcome the hunger gap. That is perhaps only because of the support for sustainable agriculture or climate-smart agriculture, again, some livestock support, and building their asset at the local level, and most importantly, to build their skills and capacity to overcome this situation. Now, coming to the third example, where I would like to again take you to a situation in Horn of Africa. As Dominic and colleagues have already stated about the drought situation, which has been affected the entire Horn of Africa region, with more than 22 million people suffering the worst drought of the century. Now, the hunger index, again, has been serious in this region, but particularly I would like to draw this example into the informal settlement of Nairobi, where it is a hub of the migrants from all over Kenya, those who come there in search of alternative livelihood. Now, in this context, what we have done is a very unique program in partnership with COICA, particularly with the approach to engage with private sector, how private sector can play a critical role in bringing a solution for those communities, those who are facing these challenges on a day-to-day basis. Now, through this public-private partnership, we have been able to launch a project which is titled as Lishapoa in local language, which is basically meaning better nutrition. And this program has been able to reach out to more than 173,000 children under 5 and targeting more than 109,000 pregnant and lactating women in partnership with private sector, Ministry of Health, UNICEF, as well as in collaboration with Scaling Up Nutrition, which is a network of agencies like ours, and the Kenya Bureau of Standards. Now, because this is an engagement into developing a healthy, nutritious food component, it is very interesting concept where a small initiative of developing a food product could help the communities to overcome their nutrition crisis. Now, this project has been also titled as one of the best practice model by COICA in 2022, which we are very proud of, as we had recently visited this project and witnessed this entire process led by the community in collaboration with the private sector, has been a very, very unique and learning experience for Concern globally. And this is where we are trying to find opportunity where we could perhaps do more research, more design and marketing element to scale up this program for a larger impact. Now, particularly if you look at this small product there, where our community leaders or the community champions are dealing with, is the dough which has been developed through the research and engagement with private sector. It is called the Orange Flakes Sweet Potato Chapati, which has been a product which is delivered through this entire program. And this particular product, where in the face of COVID-19, where the communities in the urban slums of Nairobi were facing a major crisis in terms of losing their livelihood and income, and in turn having a severe food crisis, this product with a very subsidized pricing to be provided to the communities has helped us to reach out to this whole communities, in particular targeting children and pregnant and lactating women, those who have literally benefited from this entire process. And this is a win-win situation where the food vending system led by the food vendors of the from the slum dwellers community have been really able to establish the link with the food system, with the food safety network, with the process of producing a safe and nutritious food dough, and then distributed to the vendors, which is then sold to the local communities in terms of kind of subsidiary or supplementary food support to them. Now, in these examples, what you see in common thread is basically a support for the community champions, those who are actually fighting or struggling against this food crisis on a day-to-day basis throughout their life. Now, we call them hunger warriors. They are the ones, those who are actually in the face of the hunger crisis. And this is our mission, and that is where our approach to addressing hunger has been always starting with the basic fundamental to support these community champions, how we can help them. At the same time, we need to also build a transformative agenda, because this is not something that we expect that communities should be facing in 2022, where it is becoming a regular phenomenon in the face of conflict, climate change, or in the COVID crisis. Now, that is exactly where it should be enshrined as a right, that food as a basic right for the communities, they should be able to access it. And then we are looking at also building political will that will perhaps create the backing with the financial support to the communities, with the support to build a food system which is going towards a transformation to build it a sustainable food system mechanism. And that transformation is also very core of the climate action that we are talking about today. We are not talking about climate action only in terms of carbon emission and the mitigation, but also the adaptiveness to the new crisis. That is what we are talking about. And what we do in terms of our approach, as you know our tagline, whatever it takes, that's what we say when we combat against poverty or climate change or hunger. Now that approach, definitely under the new strategy of Concern Worldwide, under the leadership of Dominic, which has been formulated for the next 5 years, we target the extreme poverty across the world wherever we work. We try to basically reach the furthest behind. That's exactly where you will see in the map where the hunger gaps are, our presence are in those countries where we work. And in order to focus in this fragile and conflict-affected context, we basically try to meet the most prominent or the most difficult humanitarian needs the communities are facing. Now, in this crisis, of course, it is a partnership with the communities and those partnerships that has really created hope for the future, that these community struggles are definitely going to yield the result to build a food system transformation in the current context. Now, the Global Hunger Index, as my colleague Junmo has already highlighted, has also a component of calling for action from governments, those who need to do something to address this critical crisis currently as we are facing. And particularly where the governments are basically called for action to be taken now. And these actions are to basically place the right to food and the local communities at the center of the food system transformation. That's exactly what every government should be taking as their core action points. And also to strengthen an inclusive initiative. We will be talking about it in the next panel discussion perhaps, where these initiatives are to be led by the local communities. And that is where we see a solution in terms of what could possibly happen. And in order to build a commitment towards this, we need to have a flexible, just, and a long-term financing mechanism to sustain this initiative so that these solutions are more permanent and more sustainable. And that is exactly where we need to build or create a crisis-proof mechanism for a sustainable food system. That is the Global Hunger Index in 2022 is asking for. And all of you joining us today in this evening have definitely made your own commitment, your own contribution, and your own support to make some difference to this global hunger crisis and helping the communities to overcome these challenges forever. Now, coming to the end, I would like to basically have a quote from our great leader, Gandhi, who had mentioned years before that the world has enough to meet everybody's need, but not everybody's greed. And that is what we are facing in the current day's affairs, where we need to see the hope of these community struggles and these two worlds that we are trying to bridge. Perhaps our small initiative or the humble initiatives of our community leaders will try to bring that bridge to make it possible to address the humanitarian needs as a first humanitarian imperative. That is a challenge for all of us today. And going back, I'm sure all of us will try to do our best in terms of helping these communities to overcome the hunger crisis forever. Thank you.